Okej. Varmt välkomna till Respektscenen som är Forum för levande historias plats på Bokmässan. Forum för levande historia är en myndighet som jobbar med frågor som rör demokrati, tolerans, alla människors lika värde med utgångspunkt i Förintelsens historia. Och Prata rasism, som ni ser lite överallt här i vår monter, är en satsning där vi försöker samla kunskap, information och material som handlar om rasism på olika sätt. Och syftet med det är att försöka starta och få mer av det kunskapsbaserade samtalet om rasism. För det tror vi behövs i samhället. Vi kommer att filma det här seminariet. Vi filmar framförallt det som sägs på scenen, men ni som sitter här längst fram kan få med era ryggar också. Så om ni känner er obekväma för det så kan ni flytta lite längre ut åt sidorna så är ni utanför bild. Okay, now I switch to English. Sorry about that. Kayo Chingonyi, we are so pleased to have you here and so happy that you wanted to come to us and have this conversation with us. You're a British Zambian poet, yeah. And you have your book Kumukanda has been a huge success in the UK. You've been awarded the Dylan Thomas Award, among other things. And now you're here, and now your book is translated into Swedish. Really happy to have you here. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, you're from Zambia. You're born in Zambia, yeah. And you moved at a young age to the UK.
Yeah.
Would you like to tell us a bit about how you experienced that as a kid coming to the UK?
Well, I lived in Zambia until I was 6 years old, and in Zambia is where I learned to speak English. So when I came to the UK, I could communicate with people, and that made it a lot easier to kind of make friends and all of these kinds of things when I went to school. But it was very different. Zambia is an equatorial place. It's very humid. I came to the UK, to the northeast of England. It was very cold all of the time. I saw snow for the first time in my life. So it was a very kind of like surreal experience because I had never experienced many of the things I was seeing for the first time. Like the weather was different, the culture was a little bit different, and then the English accent that I was exposed to in Newcastle was different too. So I could speak fluent English, but I was speaking to people and not understanding what they were saying immediately because of the way that they shaped words. So that was something that took a long time to get used to.
Can you imagine? How was it growing up, belonging both to the Zambian culture and to a British culture? How has that affected you?
I feel like belonging to more than one culture has been useful in lots of ways because, especially in London, where I've lived the most time in the UK, there's lots of people who have that. There are people from all over the world in London, and so it's not that strange to have English and then have another language or have cultural references from all around the world. So in that way, there's a space for friendship and kinship and understanding in certain places in the UK. And then sometimes it was difficult in the sense that how I was raised within my home was in a very kind of Zambian traditional way. And so my friends didn't always understand like some of the cultural references or like different like traditions that we had basically. So that can be difficult sometimes when your friend doesn't understand something about why your life is different to theirs and you have to explain. Because as a child, I think you think everybody is the same, and you don't understand those differences sometimes when you don't have a context for them.
Not only when it comes to cultures, but also when it comes to references in your writing. You have a very broad background. You studied theoretical languages, and you've also said that you have had great references in rap lyrics. How has that mix of influences affected your writing?
I think I'm really keen to bring together different types of culture, sometimes different cultural elements that wouldn't normally mix. So whenever I've been studying English literature or philosophy, all these kind of things, I also think about the ways that that information has been shared with people through folk art forms like music and oral literature and that kind of thing. So for me, it's just a way of giving a more thorough picture of some of my influences to write in that way. Because I couldn't write in just one way because I'm not just from one place, like we were speaking about a moment ago. So the best way I can write is to incorporate different elements from different influences I've had over the years.
You said as a kid you used to memorize rap lyrics, and that's partly how you came into to grow an interest for the language and for writing. Is that traceable in your writing still today?
I think if you read my work, there's a lot of reference to hip hop lyrics from certain UK musicians from a certain time. That if you were into UK hip hop at that time, you would maybe recognize the name or the phrase that I'm referencing in a particular poem. And then also, I think maybe the ways that metaphor is used within rap or simile, for example, influences sometimes how I go about putting a line of poetry together. So sometimes you can see it, and particularly maybe in performance, because I'm interested in sound, you can see that I have some kind of musical background or interest.
Great. When we were talking just before going on stage, we realized I only have your book in a Swedish version, and it's very difficult to ask you to read a poem of yours in Swedish. But then you said that it's fine, I know it by heart. I was amazed by that. Would you mind sharing some of your writings?
Yeah, so this is a part of the book from... There's a section of the book called Calling a Spade in the middle of the book.
If you need it, we have your English version there.
Perfect.
Great, thank you very much.
How prepared of you. Thank you. So there's a section in the middle of the book called Calling a Spade, where there's a section of 11-line short poems, and the N-word is one of them, but it's in 2 parts. I'll just read the second part. The N-word, part 2. You came back as rubber lips, pepper grains, blick. You're so black, you're blick, and how the word stuck to our tongues, eclipsing, or so we thought, all fear that any moment anyone might notice, and we'd be deemed the wrong side of a night sky. Lately, you are a pretty little lighty who can get dark, because even now dark means street, which means beast, which means leave now for Benfleet. These days, I can't watch a music video online without you, trolling in the comments, dressed to kill, in your new age, binary clothes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You write almost as if the word itself was a person.
Yeah, I was very interested in this particular sequence in this part of the book to think about how words have an agency, a personality of their own, and also like an association that they carry. So in particular with kind of racialized epithets and insults and these kinds of words, they contain within them the capacity to do harm to somebody. So I was thinking about that and thinking about that kind of a personality. So the words very much, those kind of epithets are people within that sequence. And I was thinking of them as active agents in the world in that sense. In a kind of philosophical sense related to the work of J.L. Austin, for example, or Judith Butler, or Denise Riley. They're very much thinking of words as having agency.
And the title of your book, Kumukanda, that's the initiation of Luale boys going into manhood in Zambia.
Yeah.
Why did you pick that title for the book?
So I'm from, on my father's side, I'm from the Levande tribe in Zambia, from northwestern Zambia. And because, as I've mentioned and we were speaking about, I moved from Zambia at a very early stage in my life, there were certain cultural rites of passage that I didn't participate in. And so the book is a kind of reckoning with that fact. It's a way of thinking about what you miss out on when you move from one place to another, whether it's losing certain friends that you had, losing a connection to maybe some people, they live in the same house all of their life. And perhaps their parents die, they inherit the house, they continue to live in that house. So I don't have that kind of connection to one place, which is a sadness sometimes, but it's also a really cool thing. I can move into different places and have connection to more than one place. But I suppose in the title I was thinking about not having that connection to Kumukanda, which is that rite of passage, that cultural movement from childhood to adulthood, which makes a very clear statement about where you've got to in your life. And if you don't have that very clear statement, then you have to approximate some other ones. And that's what the book really is interested in as far as the title.
So the process of creating the book was your Kumukanda?
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, the process of bringing together all the different elements that influence you as someone from more than one place is what I'm doing when writing the poems. So when putting the book together, that was that same process.
Words, talking about words. Words are extremely important, of course. And you have a special interest in the power of words and how to phrase them and how they influence us and as individuals and as a society. Would you mind elaborating a bit on the importance of words to you?
I think there's a connection between people that you can achieve using language, not just word-based language, but also, I guess, sound, gesture, all the different kinds of language that we use as human beings. They're just an attempt to connect between two people or a group of people. So I think words are particularly important because they're a kind of language use where you can be a little bit more specific. Particularly in the English language, you can qualify what you want to say loads of times until the person you're speaking to has almost an exact understanding of what you're trying to say. So I think words are really important as linguistic markers and tools and things that you can use to convey an idea from your mind to someone else's mind, to a group of people. And so people can share in something using words. So I'm always fascinated by words and their history and what they used to mean and what they mean now and the resonances they have in a particular room at a particular time. Yeah.
How did the process work for you? How do you pick your words? How do you elaborate them? How do you collect impressions for your writing?
So there are some writers and some poets who take many, many years to choose the right words in their poem. Elizabeth Bishop was described as leaving the poem in its draft stage and then leaving a blank space where that word that she was missing would be, and the poem wouldn't be finished until she decided what word would go there. And then Dylan Thomas had a process where he would choose a word which he thought of as okay, kind of what he meant, and then he would keep going over different words until he found the one that it sounded right, but it also meant the right thing. For me, it's a kind of in-between process of that. The words I use in my poems have to have like a sonic resonance. They have to mean something at the level of sound alone. But also, I think they have to be specific in terms of their referential meaning. When I'm trying to convey information, that word has to be as close as possible to the thing that I was trying to express, or maybe sometimes the thing that the poem was trying to express in that moment. So sometimes I choose words which are maybe a halfway house between what I mean to say and what has the right resonance. Yeah, and there are often moments where the word isn't quite right exactly, but it feels better. I could have used a more literal phrasing, but it feels better to phrase it in a more sonically rich way.
Great. And now your book is out in Swedish.
Yeah.
What experience do you hope to leave your Swedish readers with?
I feel when work is translated into a different language, there's another process. There's a new process of authorship. I have to thank my translator, Helena, who's there. Because in translating my work, we've entered into a new process of authorship, and she has had to make certain choices about, firstly, really trying to get to an understanding of the work in English, which I think you have really achieved through some of the conversations we've had. Maybe a deeper understanding than even I have, and then to take that understanding and bring a new, renewed understanding in Swedish. So this is how it is in English. How can I make that happen in Swedish? Can I make that happen in Swedish? Which is, I think, a fascinating process of authorship, which is really to be celebrated, because it's difficult enough to do that in the first language, and then to do that again is an entirely new process, I think. And I'm really excited by the possibilities of the poems in that resonance, in that texture of language, in that sound of words. I'm really fascinated by how people will receive it and enjoy it and experience those poems.
Thanks. And time is running out, but before we part, I would just like to ask you, what's next? What can the readers expect from Kayo Chingonyi in the future?
I'm writing some new poems, so quite slowly working towards a second collection of poems. I'm also writing an essay, which is, well, a book of essays on some of the themes we've been talking about, which is called Prodigal. I don't know exactly when that will be out, but the idea is to have maybe a draft of the book of essays and a draft of the book of poems by the end of the year or the start of next year. So that's what I'm working on in earnest at the moment. And so those are the next things that probably people will see at some stage in the next couple of years.
Great, looking forward to it. Kayo Chingonyi, thank you so much for coming here, and thank you for listening to Kayo. And there will be another opportunity to listen to you in only an hour from now, 12 o'clock, when you will have a conversation with Johannes Agnoro up in the seminar halls. Thank you for coming, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your short stay in Sweden.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh.